meeting. I'm going to take the first four bills, and then Representative Minnesota is going to take the last one. As we're going forward with each bill, if you have questions about that bill, if you just signify, remember each person is muted and they'll have to be unmuted then to talk. But if you'll just let us know, then we'll recognize you and answer those questions. I appreciate y'all's patience. It's a little bit new for all of us, so we'll just try to stumble through this the best we can. I wish we could all be here in person, but that's not possible. We're going to kind of jump around just a little bit. We're not going to take anything up that's not on the agenda that was set out, but not necessarily in that same order. The first thing I would like to do is call up House Bill number 195. And I'll give y'all just a second to find that. But that's a bill that's actually double referred to our committee and municipalities. It's a bill that we passed 119 to nothing last year, and then the Senate didn't do anything with it for whatever reason. Well, actually, they did handle it in committee, but they didn't take it up on the floor. It's for our small towns, small municipalities under 2,500 people. If they have a special election for mayor, then instead of having to man all the different polling precincts, they can have one central location. It requires that they have to post notice at the voting places that they're not having the election at as to where it's going to be. They have to advertise the place that they're going to have an election. So there's plenty of notice given that people will have one place to vote. It's simply a measure that is meant to save money for our small municipalities when they're holding these elections. And so this is Representative Rushing's bill, but I'm handling it today. And so, do we have any questions that anyone would like to ask? All right. Representative Pearl River, do you have a question? I can't hear you. We can't hear you. Okay. All right. He has no question. All right. My recommendation would be title sufficient, do pass. Is there anyone opposed? All right. Then the motion carries. All right. Thank y'all. Number 2 would be House Bill 1019. And this is something new that I think that's Representative Lamar from Tate County has this is his bill, but I'm going to do it today. He may want to do it later on, but in our committee, this is for the gubernatorial inauguration funds. It requires that contributions and expenditures be reported to the Secretary of State. The bill sets out a timeline that you have a certain amount of time to report those contributions, and you have a certain amount of time to either to close those accounts. But it basically just treats those contributions like other campaign funds would be treated. We have to report who we receive our funds from and who we spend our funds on. And the same thing would be true then of inauguration funds. Receipts and expenditures has the same $200 limit. So the small contributions, expenditures don't have to be reported. I think a vast majority, if not all states, require this, but there may be a state or two that doesn't, but a majority of the states do require it. But that's basically what the bill does. It sets out some details, but it follows our reporting requirements, and these things would be reported to the Secretary of State and made public. All right, any comments or questions? Representative Curry. Please, yeah.
I figured it out. And Tommy Reynolds, you're not muted, but anyway, I wondered if we were ever going to make people running for mayor and supervisor and alderman. I thought we did a bill one year to make them put their things on the Secretary of State's website like we have to. Did that?
I'm not positive about whether that's been done. I've just last year was the first year I've been in here, so I
Yeah.
don't know whether we
It
did
must
or
have
not.
died in the Senate, but that's
Definitely something we can look at going forward.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if we don't have any other questions, then I would call this measure to vote. I do recommend that we do this. All those opposed, please indicate. All right, all those in favor of it, say aye.
Aye.
All right, but thank you very much. I think we've been operating kind of under the premise that if you're not opposed, then you're for it. So, and because of the communication problems, that's what I'll do going forward. If you have opposition, please state it. If you're not opposed, then we'll assume that you're for it. All right, if that being the case, then the bill is passed, time sufficiently passed. All right, thank you very much. The next one is a new bill that is Representative Stevenson's bill. Is House Bill number 1048. And this bill, it changes the qualifying deadlines from March the 1st to February the 1st for certain statewide, state district, county, and county district offices, basically for all of us that have the March 1st deadline. It becomes February 1st. It does one other thing. The election commissioners had asked, their deadline is way on later than ours for a qualifying deadline period. And they had asked to have the same one as all the rest of the people in the county have. So this does that also. Theirs is moved from June to to January 31, where the others are moved from March 1st. I would not to April to February 1, excuse me, not January 31, they're February 1. But it would set their association has to be the same as the rest of us. So that's what it does. It moves everybody's deadline for these county and state elections to February 1. All right, I open the floor up for any questions that anyone might have. All right, seeing no questions, then are there any opposed to moving the deadline from the current deadlines to the February 1st? All right, I see no opposition. So House Bill number 1048 has been passed, as time sufficient be passed. Then the next measure is, let me see, I think it's Representative Powell from Rankin County's bill. It's actually something also that the Secretary of State had asked for. So this came from their recommendation. I don't know that it's been handled in other years or not, but it's the statewide election management system, and it allows for the removal of voters under certain procedures who have failed to respond to notices and who fail to vote after certain periods of time. And what it does is it's a 4-year period of time or 2 general federal elections. All right, you can you're going to be sent an opportunity to respond if, let me see. Yeah, it's, just a second, I want to tell you exactly right, but it has, you can either vote or you can respond when you are, when they actually send you an actual request for response. They're not going to remove you, and you're going to have the same 4-year period of time to do that. And if and obviously you can be put right back on if you notify them or want to, and they don't do any of this within 90 days of an election. You do not remove anybody within 90 days of an election. So people have plenty of time to come back in and clear up any ambiguities. These
yeah, we're gonna go over.
you have notice and it provides for a time for removal of voter registration records, and it shall not happen within 90 days of federal or general election. And it provides for retention of the removed voter registration records for 2 years from federal general elections after removal. So you have all the information and plenty of opportunity just to be placed back on the roll. But it's to allow them to have definite time periods and parameters for when people can be removed. And so I'm open for any questions anyone might have.
Can you hear me?
All right, Ripper.
All right, Mr. Chairman, you mentioned earlier that the bill says that you can either vote or respond to this notice, but I don't think that's what the language of this bill says. Starting on line 22.
All right, yeah, you have to do both. I'm sorry. I was just, you got to vote and respond. Yeah.
So I could vote in November of 2020. I could cast my ballot 2020, 2019, 2018, and 2019. But if something happens and I'm unable to respond to a notice, or I don't receive it, or my wife throws it in the trash like she always does, then I'm going to be purged from the voter rolls, even though I'm a consistent voter. The statute says at least once, so I could vote for 4 consecutive years, and if I just happen not to respond to this notice, I'm being purged.
No, the council says that's not correct.
Well, can you show me where?
She's going to respond without objection. Use this one.
Okay. Hey, so you have to fail to respond to the confirmation notice that you receive in the mail, and also fail to vote in 2 federal general elections before you're removed from the voter rolls.
I don't think I agree with that reading. It says, notwithstanding any other provision of the law, the commission shall remove from SIMS those voters who fail after having been mailed a confirmation notice to do either of the following, and then it puts them together: respond to the confirmation notice and vote at least once during a period of 4 years. Or you could update the voter's registration information, but again, and is thrown in there, vote at least once during a period of 4 consecutive years. I'm reading this to say that you have to do both. We're not doing one or the other. I mean, I think it would be better if that said or, but it says and.
If you look, there was a Supreme Court case where this was brought up in Ohio, and I understand what you're saying, but you have to fail to do both. Like, you can't, if you don't respond to the confirmation notice, but you vote, you will not be removed. If you respond.
Why can't that say or? Respond to the confirmation or vote at least once. And then update the voter's registration information or vote at least once.
Because it's not exactly, it reads the right way as based on the Ohio law, and that the Supreme Court upheld that law. The language is exactly as that law was written. But the way it is you have to fail to do either respond and vote or update and vote. So it's not like you're not going to be removed if you respond to the confirmation notice but you don't vote, you're going to stay on the rolls. If you don't respond to the confirmation notice but you vote, you'll stay on the rolls.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, is the gentleman offering an amendment?
No, I'm understanding what she's saying now. I'm getting it. I see, Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think that the Secretary of State needs to be stressed for local authorities. They need to send out some sort of guidance if it's going to go into place to make sure, because just like I easily misread that, anybody can, and that's going to be cause for confusion. My other question, it requires that counties, that the clerks send this by certified mail. Has anybody thought about the cost that this will impose on the counties for sending all these notices to the registered voters?
Well, I think the cost to the counties is outweighed by just the assurance that, I mean, this is something you really need to know they received it. So, I have to send certified I had sent a lot of things certified that I don't necessarily enjoy having to do, but this is important that that you know they received it. And if you're looking at somebody's right to vote, you want to know
Right.
that they received it. And so I think it's worth the cost.
Is there some sort of like mechanism here if the clerk does not receive confirmation that it was received, will the voter still be purged?
Return it, maybe the confirmation somehow gets lost in the mail, and that would keep the voter from being purged. Or if the voter was
Like if it was returned in the mail, if you mail something to someone, they didn't receive it, and it was returned, then you wouldn't purge them because it would not be noticed to them of receiving that. So you would have to affirmatively provide that notice to someone and know you provided it, have proof you provided that notice to someone.
And the clerks are going to be required to keep this somewhere, all this documentation?
They'll have the voter records. I'm sure they're going to be keeping up what they sent out, what they hadn't sent out. But I mean, the voter part of it they have. As far as the notice part, I'm sure they're going to be required to keep this. As exactly the mechanism they're going to do that, I'm not sure, but that's something the Secretary of State will have to go over the counties with.
Okay. Those are all of my questions.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have some questions.
Yes, Latham Hines, all right.
Okay. I'm very much opposed to this bill. The language in this bill is a use it or lose it type of situation. And we always look for ways to try to make it so hard for people to be able to vote. When we think about the Second Amendment, just because you don't shoot your firearm doesn't mean that you lose your right to have one. And I think that's what appears to be the intent of this bill. When we think about folks who serve in the military, they could easily, miss 2 elections and not receive a confirmation card. Would they then be purged from the rolls because they did not participate in the election or did not respond to a card?
They're mailed an overseas postcard, and so their voting is basically controlled by federal law. They're probably more likely to have an opportunity to vote than some other people would have. I disagree with your premise that the purpose is strictly to remove people from the roll. I know that this just provides a definite mechanism that the counties can use to purge people off the roll. There are a lot of people that they're not with us anymore, or for various reasons don't live there anymore. There could be a multitude of reasons why someone doesn't vote in a lot of elections. I know that you can always vote. I know even 17 years ago in my primary election by some people that were very professional in this, they provided you a list of likely voters, and they excluded people who had not voted in a certain number of elections, which did not exceed this number, and said the chances of them ever voting was, they gave the percentage of those people that vote. And so, and there's no prohibition to get somebody coming right back in and getting on the rolls. It's not preventing anybody from voting. You can't do this within 90 days of an election. And just because if you've been removed, there's no reason, that's not a mark against you, not any reason that why you couldn't register. So if someone has been taken off the rolls and they have decided they want to vote, then they're going to know they've been taken off the rolls, and it's going to be way in advance of any time that would time limits or limitations. So they'll have ample opportunity to to solve any problem created by that. And, you know, I respect your position on that, but, you know, I just don't, I think the Supreme Court took all those things into consideration when they approved this language.
Okay. Well, I'd also want to raise a point that after, and I think the attorney said that this is mirrored after Ohio's process, and Ohio experienced a lot of errors as a result of putting this into place. In fact, found that 40,000 people were erroneously flagged for being purged. So I just think that we should be very careful about following something that is clearly posing as a barrier and is wrong. But since based on what you're saying, I think that we should be looking at an alternative to make it easier for people to be able to register. If in 120 days they receive a notice that comes 30 days later, that means that they would have a shorter period of time to be able to vote. And so would you consider an online voter registration process where they can quickly get back on the rolls, or same day voter registration so that they can quickly get back on the rolls if, for example, they have been purged, whether it was an error or not?
Well, lady, at this time, I wouldn't.
Okay. I have two amendments to consider, Mr. Chairman. One of them is to amend the 2 federal elections, which is on line 32, and it may be in other places, but I'm just looking at this right now, and changing that to 4 general federal elections. Would you consider that amendment?
Lady, I'm not going to consider any amendments to the existing bill. You know, I know the court has approved the bill like it is, and I just feel like that any amendments, that we shouldn't make any amendments to the bill, but that's my position.
And I appreciate that. One last question. In the language where it says respond, does that include confirm? Is that meant to also mean confirm?
And what do you mean confirm?
The card, so when the card is received, if there are no changes to the information that's received by certified mail, and the voter responds and confirms the information is correct, does that also, is that also received as justification that the voter is still where they say they are?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I mean, obviously they received it at that location. I was sent certified to that location. That's considered a confirmation that they're still where it says they were. Yes.
And would the response require a mail-in, or can it be done over the phone or by email, or what?
It's with the return postage that's actually included in with it, isn't it? Yes, it's with the return postage. There'll be a form that'll be prescribed by the Secretary of State, and it'll be prepaid postage, so it won't cost them anything to send it back.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Chairman Yalobusha.
Oh, okay. I guess we have to speak.
I'm sorry. I thought that was who speak. Mr. Young. All right.
Oh,
Thank
no,
you.
I yield to the senior gentleman. I raised my hand. I didn't blurt out, but
Okay. Well,
Then I'll yield to the gentleman from Lauderdale.
oh no, go ahead.
Okay.
You the senior
All right.
gentleman. Go ahead.
Well,
I
that doesn't
yield
mean
to represent the room.
Well, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate the intent of the bill. I think that people are well-meaning here. I do think, though, that I would always err on the side of more participation in our elections. I think our percentage participation is woefully short in this state, and for whatever reasons there have been, And I think we're putting out such good things in our state now, and come to Mississippi and do business here and make some money here and come here. And I don't want us to do anything that would tarnish our image. And secondly, when states do these differing, and they can up to a point, but the Congress can ultimately pass federal legislation to regulate about the conduct of federal elections. And then we might wind up with two sets of election laws that probably wouldn't be a good thing. So the more states that do this, that diverge, we don't have, we're more restrictive than most states, most all states in about our voting systems. And I mean, about who can participate. The felons disenfranchisement is probably the most severe here one of the handful. And then we've got other requirements that are burdensome. So I think that if anything, it probably sends out a signal that we don't intend to. I don't think any of us intend to. And I don't think we've got any state or federal elections this year. I wish we could study not only election security, but election, how to increase participation too, and maybe merge the two together. That's my thought. I don't think it's the end of the world if it passes, but I think we might be a solution in need of a real problem. I don't think this is urgently needed as some other things. So that's just two bits worth.
Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Gentleman from Yellow Bush. That's hard to say. But as you know, this is just the first step along a long process. And, we'll have opportunity to talk about this as we move forward and before it's actually taken on the floor and goes any further. But it's just bring it out here to see if we can't move it along and let's start talking about it. You're recognized. If you had.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I think we are narrowly, and I'm speaking against the legislation. I have all due respect for the gentleman from Rankin County. As a matter of fact, he helped me with the piece of legislation yesterday. But I think we have an abundance of ambiguity with this piece of legislation, and I think this language is bordering, discrimination by disallowing, a person to participate in the voting process. And if we are looking at purging the rolls, I think the Secretary of State's office is already mandating that circuit clerks do this. As a matter of fact, I know they are because my circuit clerk purged over 8,000 folks off of the rolls using these same measures for disqualification. So my question there is, if that's already been done, then why are we, dealing with this in a different piece of legislation now?
All right. Well, I want to respond to that by saying two things. First, I don't think they're disqualifying anyone because it has to be done early enough that anyone retains that right to come back in and vote if that's what they want to do. There's plenty of time to get back on the road. But to answer your question, my understanding is this bill would I don't know exactly what the Secretary of State's doing right now. I know that this bill would set up some definite guidelines for what can be done and can't be done, and there'd be some uniformity among all the counties, and and they would be doing the same thing, following the same procedure in each and every place. You know, maybe if they are already doing that in your county, they maybe have that authority somewhere else to do that. I'm not sure. I just know what this legislation would give them, and it would provide them some certainty as to what can be done, what can't be done, what kind of procedures they have to follow, and to make sure they protect every individual's right to have notice about what's happening and have the time frames involved. And so,
and Mr. Chairman,
yeah,
if an individual has not re-registered 30 days prior to the election, then they will not be allowed to vote. Is that correct?
that's correct.
So the window, you know, might be a little bit larger than that. But if for some reason, if they haven't been notified, and I can give you a great example on this one. My circuit clerk, Donna Jill Johnson, is Catholic. One of her church members received, and I'm not saying received a notice that they were purged, because they didn't receive the notice, but they got purged from the roll because they thought they were dead. This was her church member. Now, her church member contacted the circuit clerk's office and contacted the church member, the circuit clerk, and informed them, you know I'm alive. I was at church with you. Why did you purge me off the roll? So accidents can happen, but she was not allowed to vote, and she was not allowed to re-register at that point.
Well,
so now
this bill would have helped her because they couldn't have just arbitrarily taken that action. They would have had to notify to her. And so she would have actually had more protection under this measure than she had before.
Well, my question was this, though. Aren't the election commissioners allowed to purge persons off of the rolls currently?
All right, there's 3 provisions. Council tells me if they've died, if they committed certain disenfranchising felonies, or if they're determined to be incompetent. Otherwise, they don't have the authority. And so this, and it's, you know, the minimum she's going to know before that time, that re-registration deadline will be 30 days. If you have not taking anybody off more than 90 days for the election. So, and it could be as long as 2 or 3 years, depending on what time, you know, when the election is going to be. But actually, it will add some certainty that for voters that they don't have now, because it will place some restrictions on the clerks as to what procedure they have to follow and when people are eligible, and notice that they have to provide.
Mr. Chairman, I think, and this, again, is just my personal opinion, I think we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity with this piece of legislation. And I think that, you know, if we're going to consider, you know, use it or lose it, that we need to look at, you know, some other things also. And I know the chair has said that he wasn't going to be open for any amendments. I've had a bill that's been in the process for 3 or 4 years now, and it's one that I think all of us could get along with. And I would like to ask that we would consider an amendment. My amendment would simply state that, you know, anyone that's receiving any type of assistance be required to register.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm not willing to entertain that on this bill.
Okay, Mr. Chairman.
But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. But any other question?
Well, no, sir. I'm interested in trying to assist people with becoming registered voters, not taking away voting privileges. And I know here, just like you said, we've got a long list of felony convictions, and we've got a long list of other things that disenfranchise the voter. And, there's a serious concern with regard to intent. Are we trying to increase the ability, capabilities, and the number of people that can vote, or are we trying to avoid people from being able or have the right to vote?
I don't think there's anything in here that would attempt to keep a voter from being able to vote. I do believe it provides some certainty for the people administering the system and the people that are using the system. All right. Any other questions?
Aaron, this is Jansen again.
You
Am
recognize?
I recognized, Mr. Chairman? Thank you. Aaron, I got to go back to my earlier thing, and I keep reading this and I keep coming back to it. On line 26, okay, the bill reads, if I'm just going to kind of sum it up, voters who fail after having been mailed a notice to do either of the following, and then there are two subparts there. Subpart A says respond to confirmation notice and vote at least once. I feel like that either verbiage there means you have to read each of those subparts as a singular requirement. Respond to confirmation notice and vote at least once during a period of 4 years. I really think that and in both of those subparts should be or if we're going to comply with the federal law. But go ahead.
It's the reason it says either of the following is because you can it's for the respond to the confirmation notice or update your voter registration information.
Okay.
That's what the either is for. Okay, then you have to, for you to be removed is a failure to do either. So you fail to respond and you fail to vote, or
At least once.
fail to update and you fail to vote. If
Okay.
you put or in there, you could be removed just for failing to respond to the confirmation notice. And that's what the Supreme Court said would be unconstitutional. Have to fail to do both. And that's why there's an and.
You have to fail to do both. So for subpart A, you have to fail to both respond and you have to fail to vote, or you have to fail to update whatever and fail to vote then too, right?
Right.
And the two general federal elections would include a midterm and presidential, right? So
Yeah.
like an 8. Is that correct?
Any general federal election, yes. So it's not just presidential.
So the
election.
4-year period has to encompass. Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, you're recognized.
Thank you. I have to go back to what Representative Owen is saying as well. So let me put it to where the goats can get it. If I receive a card and I do not vote in the next 4 years, I can be purged if I have not responded to that card or updated my information.
And if you fail to vote.
But if you've sent the card back, you don't have to vote.
Right.
You got to do both. You got to either not send the card back and not vote.
Or not update.
So I cannot send. I cannot send.
Have not done any of these things during that period of time.
Okay, so I cannot send the card back and vote and be okay. Okay, I can be sent a card and not receive the card and didn't know I didn't receive a card. And then say, well, I don't like who's on the ballot, so I'm not going to vote for this election or the next one, and I would be purged.
No, not if you didn't receive the card. You have to have received it. That's why they're sending it certified return receipt requested, because they're going to know whether you received it or not.
So what if the person that's living in my house received it, but I didn't receive it? and I didn't respond to it.
Are we doing signature verification?
Then you wouldn't be purged. It's, right.
Like,
So,
it's
Oh,
forwardable
yeah.
mail. So if somebody, it's sent to somebody else and you don't live there anymore and they put it back in the mailbox, it'll be forwarded on to your current address. And you can respond to that by, marking, hey, this isn't my address anymore. And they'll update your voter registration information and you would not be purged.
well, I can tell you from firsthand experience as an election commissioner that when I was an election commissioner, we got forwarded addresses all the time. And that still did not verify a voter's address. That card would still come back to us, or it'd be yet another address and we have to send it again. And I think that, knowing that that process is not error free poses an issue by actually disenfranchising voters. So I just think we need to be very careful before we put something like this in statute that's actually going to disenfranchise voters in the state of Mississippi, with the history that Mississippi has when it comes to voting rights and enfranchisement.
Yes, Representative Young. I see you have your hand up.
No, sir, I didn't lower my hand.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm sorry.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman.
That's all right. I don't understand that hand thing myself. So, all right.
I appreciate you recognizing me, but
right.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Any other question?
Just one more question. So regardless, no one under this statute is going to be purged for at least 4 consecutive years, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
All righty. Let's move on. All those that are opposed to this, please indicate that your opposition.
I'm
Raising
opposed.
my hand and I'm opposing.
I'm opposed.
Representative Bailey, I can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted. If you're opposed, will you raise your hand? Are you opposed?
Now,
Yeah,
I
now I can
oppose.
hear you.
now I oppose. I got to get used to all this fancy
I
stuff.
understand. You're a no. Okay.
Yeah.
Representative, who's somebody count? All right. So there. All right. There are 5 no's, 8 yeses, and 5 no's. All right.
I thought we had more than that. And I apologize for speaking out, sir.
All right. Yeah. All right. There's 17 members on the call now and 5 no's. That's all right. So that's what I've been informed. All right. With that, so the measure passes, title sufficient, do pass. All right. And we'll discuss this some more, I'm sure, during the next week or so. All right. The next measure is House Bill number 586. And I would like to recognize the Vice Chairman, gentleman from DeSoto, that's going to handle that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. House Bill 586 came about because currently our Secretary of State's office is being sued over the way that we require naturalized citizens to offer proof of citizenship when they're registering to vote. What we have been doing currently is checking these folks on the front side or the front end of their registration. This bill will repeal the statute that we're being sued over and basically replace it with lines 102 through 106, which will check citizenship on the back end for everybody that registers. New registrations will be checked through state and federal databases. And in turn, it will treat everyone exactly the same. This way, no one is singled out, no people group, and it reduces the burden to naturalized citizens and puts us in line with the Equal Protections Act. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Entertain any questions if there are any.
I have a question.
Yes,
Chairman.
Representative Owen.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. It's important to point out here, we're not requiring that the registrant provide any additional information, right?
Correct. The current system is if let's say you're a naturalized citizen and you're registering to vote, we made them prove it on the front side. And
Right.
that's where the lawsuit came in, is that it was different treatment being made to folks that everybody else wasn't required to do. So this is going to make them check it on the back side. There's still a mechanism in place. It's existing law, and there's a mechanism in place if they want to take. And
So the
have it here.
burden is going to be on the burden is going to be on the government to verify.
Yes, the burden
Right.
will be on the government, not the individual.
Perfect.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Representative Reynolds.
how is the procedure to verify? Now, of course, if you're born in the United States, you're an American citizen, but, you know, we are American citizens, most, and how would, when we go to register or when we go to vote, what would we have to prove? Or if we were requested to show would we have to be requested to show we're a citizen, or how would this work?
Well, I think
You mentioned
the way that it will work
what
is,
are we doing?
it is the burden won't be on you. If you want to register to vote, you will just go and register to vote. It'll be up to the Secretary of State's office to then take and check everybody that registers to vote up to the current databases that are available to them, both federally and statewide. And so that was part of the reason that there was a lawsuit in the first place, was that they were requiring additional steps and effort on people that were American citizens that they didn't require on other folks. So if you want to go in and register, the burden's not on you until you show up. Let's say you go in to register and you're not an American citizen. When they take and run it on the database, if it flags that you aren't an American citizen, you still have the opportunity, because they'll let the local folks know, they still have the opportunity to then take, just according to current statute, to prove that you are a citizen. And if you have no proof, none of the different documents that are outlined in our state law, you can actually request a hearing and present your case before them. So it doesn't disenfranchise anybody, and it puts us in line, and it kind of takes away the reason for the lawsuit in the first place. It just keeps us in line with the Equal Protection Act and makes things better for everyone.
Well, what you're saying, I guess, is that there won't be anything that all persons will go and register to vote, and perhaps the Secretary of State will flag some after that on a citizenship question, and then those people would have a right, I presume, to challenge that disqualification after they've registered.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. And I guess is the Secretary of State to promulgate procedures to do this, or are they in the bill?
Well, we currently have procedures for this. I think where the lawsuit came in, the problem was the way that they were doing it all on the front side and putting the burden on folks to have to make a case for their citizenship and prove it on the front side.
Okay, well, that's pretty, you either are or you aren't, so that could be done.
Are there any more questions? Mr. Chairman, I would recommend it then that this is a title sufficiently passed.
I have a question.
All right, y'all heard
I have
the
a
recommendation.
question. I
Okay,
have a question.
Okay,
sure.
yes,
Okay.
Representative Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. On line 19, where it says if evidence exists that a particular registered voter is not a citizen of the U.S., etc., what constitutes as evidence? Is it the name of a person? Is it?
This is existing law. I believe the evidence would be if for some reason you showed up or you couldn't prove that you were a citizen and you showed up to try and register to vote, or when they check you to the databases, either statewide or in the federal databases, if for some reason you got flagged. That would be the only evidence really that they could prove that you weren't a citizen of the United States.
Okay. All right. For subsection, let me find it. Let me see. Section 2, subsection 2, A through D, which delineates the types of forms that verify you being a citizen.
Are you talking about lines 88 down?
No, that's not what I'm looking for.
34.
34. I'm
You said
sorry.
section 2?
Yeah, no, section 1, subsection 2. So yeah, lines 34 through 50, I think. That will require an individual to pay to get these copies. So essentially they're paying to prove that they're a citizen, correct?
I'm sorry, can you restate your question?
So line 34 says a birth certificate, which has a cost to it. Line 36 would be a passport, which most folks don't have a passport. Line 39 would be some type of naturalization documentation. Line 48 would be whatever the federal statute allows. Does that not equate to like a poll tax?
I don't think so, ma'am. Most everybody would have some type of proof. It's not, you don't have to provide all of these items. It can just be any one of these items. These are sufficient for proof of citizenship.
So if I'm a grandmother that was born by, you know, a midwife and I didn't get a birth certificate and I'm flagged as not being a citizen, then, and I've been voting all of my life, had no issues, but all of a sudden I'm being flagged, is that person then purged from the rolls?
Yes, ma'am. Council informs me this isn't going to be retroactive. It's not going to go back and look at anything. It's only for new registration. So if you've been voting your whole life, it's not going to all of a sudden flag you as, you know, a non-citizen. This is just for new registrations. People that are new to voting, that are signing up, they already checked a lot of this anyways. The problem is with the lawsuit is kind of how we've been doing it the way it was in our state code. This just fixes that and puts it in line with the Equal Protection Act so that we can be on the up and on par with what's already approved federally.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I am concerned about the time of this, the timeliness of this. And I wanted to ask for an amendment if you would consider for on line 29, be registered to vote no less than 120 days prior to an election. That would give an opportunity for folks, if they are flagged, to be noticed and have an opportunity to do whatever they need to do so that they can still participate in the upcoming election. Would you consider that?
Isn't there already set up in the appeal process?
And that's just for receiving the notice that's done at least 4 months out.
Okay, yes, council informs me that there's already a process in place. If for some reason that you were notified you were not going to be allowed to be a registered voter, you have a window to bring forth proof. And there's also an appeal process if for any reason, even if you're outside that window? Yeah, even if you're outside that window. I would probably incline to say the same thing that the chairman said on the previous bill, and that is the wording needs to be somewhat specific because this is trying to get us to conform with federal law. And so if we add something to it, it has a chance of just creating another lawsuit down the road. And that's the whole reason why we haven't even have this bill before us now.
So could this process happen within that 30-day window?
Once you're notified, if you bring any one of these supporting documents down and prove, yes, I am, then you're golden, basically. And even if you don't make it within the 30-day window, you still have the appeal process, which you can, even if you don't have any of these documents, you still have an appeal process where you can go before the registrar and make your case, and whatever they decide is good, and the Secretary of State will honor. So there's a lot of checks and balances built into the current law. It's just this one issue that we're trying to clean up.
Okay, and is it clear that the notice is sent certified as well?
That
So that the voters, so that there's confirmation that the voter received it?
I don't know if it distinguishes whether or not it must be sent certified mail or not. No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Chairman, I'd recommend title sufficient be passed.
All right, y'all heard the recommendation. Next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right, excuse me. I see a hand up here. It's a little unusual procedure. Representative Rosebud, do you have a question?
No, Mr. Chairman, that was from the previous vote.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry. All right, we have a recommendation, title sufficient, do pass. All those opposed to the bill, please indicate so.
Willie Bailey, I oppose.
All right, I see two. All right, I see two against. Then the remainder you are. It's not 7. It's 2-13. I think it.
We got 13. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's 11-2. All right, so the bill does pass. 11-2. Thank you each one of y'all for being here today. That is all that we are going to consider. I'll be glad to talk to y'all about any of these measures that were passed today between now and when we take them up on the floor, and we'll discuss and continue to work on them. And I just entertain a motion to rise and report.
Rise and report.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.